This is Venusian Womb, a space for orienting to reality through the body,
where we explore how systems, culture, identity, and lived experience shape human perception.
And what it means to stay grounded, question deeply, listen honestly, and learn when to trust yourself, when to question yourself, and how to discern the difference. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Venusian Womb Podcast. This is episode 5 of our season 2, and we are just so excited for all of these conversations, for the incredible people that we've been meeting along the way, people that have been coming into our field in the most perfect moments. And with that being said, we are so excited to welcome our guest, Mikey. He really came into my field personally in such a synchronistic way. And from just the moment that we connected, we just had so much beautiful depth and conversation around polarity, around masculine and feminine energy, and how we as humans naturally embody this duality and this polarity within ourselves, separate of gender, and really exploring a lot more about what this feminine energy looks like, feels like. How can we embrace more of this energy within ourselves, as well as our masculine energy, which I do feel would be beautiful to maybe introduce as we begin this conversation, is really start diving into what these two mean. And also speaking about the polarity of both of these energies at play within ourselves, within all of the relationship dynamics that we are having with our friends, our family, and anyone else that we are choosing to be in connection with. You'll notice that this feminine and masculine energy is at play. So we're so excited to really dive into this conversation, to understand also men a bit more as women, and vice versa, to give perspective to men as women and having worked with women. So we're really excited to see how much we can learn from men and women and how we can relate with one another even deeper. And so with that being said, I'm going to introduce our guest, Mikey. He's been so beautifully working within the men's space and hosting spaces for men to really start to build more of their power and clarity around how they're showing up in the world for themselves and their families and their communities. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Mikey so he can introduce himself to you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Melina. My name is Mikey. I'm a men's mental health and personal growth advocate. Here, I started to identify some problems that men were facing a number of years ago, and at first got a little bit upset that there wasn't more empathy for men in society, and decided that upsetness, that little bit of anger that I was starting to feel wasn't really conducive to solving anything. So I got very curious and started stepping into more spaces that were just for men, spaces that I'd never knew existed, and found that there's a whole world of men and communities and sub-communities of men that are dedicated to deepening themselves and doing the inner work so they can show up better as fathers, as husbands, as brothers, as friends. And I just drank the Kool-Aid. I was like, this is like the solution. Like, instead of like getting upset that, there's all these problems that men are facing in society today, and like, why isn't there, like, getting mad about it, putting on the Andrew Tate lens and saying, like, this is like, fuck this and blah, blah, blah. Well, what can we actually do about it? And I think that the solution is for men to help men. And so I've just started saying yes to any opportunities that I've been able to do that over the last year. And things keep kind of opening up and it's survive, and I'm here for it.
That's awesome. And I love, not love, but as you mentioned that you've noticed problems, you've noticed that there's things that have come into the field as you've been doing men's work. And I guess that'll bring us into our first question. What is it that you've noticed through the work you're doing, through these platforms or these spaces where men are gathering to learn to dismantle all or just notice what's happening, what are the main struggles men are currently facing that have come into your field that you've noticed?
Yeah. I think probably the biggest problem that men face for themselves is that they do not know how to regulate. They are very disembodied and they are in a constant fight or flight sympathetic state.
Could you
And
define more for people what you mean by regulation?
yeah, like embodied people don't even know what that means. So yeah, so there you have two nervous system states. You have your fight or flight, your sympathetic, and then you have your rest and digest, your parasympathetic. And yeah, like it's when you are most of the time in a day throughout in the West, like you're grinding, you're going, you're working, you're doing meetings, you're making money, like it's constant go, go, go. It's like that grind state culture.
Mm-hmm.
And but in your parasympathetic, that's when you are calm. That's when you want to have a regulated nervous system means that you can switch between these two states. And in your parasympathetic, it's much more healing. It's much more grounding. You find that the noise in your head starts to slow down or quiet down. And you can, and if you, once you feel it, you can't unfeel it. I'll give you an example. So like I was probably 36 the first, and I was, my life had kind of taken several unexpected turns. I lost my relationship, I lost my home, and I lost my job in the same 6-week period. And I didn't know what to do about any of that. So what did I do? I just ran. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to go to Bali where everything will be better. And of course you get there and now you're just have a bunch of problems in a more pretty place. And I went to I started going to a yoga studio. It was like, they did hatha yoga. And I remember coming out of like my first hatha yoga class and feeling so good. And I was like, what? This is amazing. And I didn't know that. I just kept going back. I was like, this feels so nice. And what it was I was regulated for the like first time in my adult life. Yeah. So to bring this back to men, like this idea that there's so much grind culture and there's so much like optimization porn. I have a friend who calls it the Tim Ferriss effect, which dates me a little bit. You call it the Chris Williamson effect these days, right? Or the Diary of a CEO effect, which is like constant optimization and constant grind
Mm-hmm.
culture. And what men tend to do is outsource their self-worth to external factors, external wins. So your job, your career, your status, money, women, like car, and all that stuff. Like, oh, they're chasing those things. And when I get those things, I'll feel okay. When I get those things, I'll calm. When I'll take a break. And they're highly motivated by this, like the kind of the Hollywood version of masculinity, where you need to constantly go out and achieve and have those things so that you can make the money, get the girl, get the car, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So much of that comes from a place of lack. I don't like I am not enough as I am, and I need to go and achieve in this world so that I have worth. And there's a like Connor Beaton, who is uh, I mean a hero of mine, to be honest, but also like a leader in the men's space. He calls it dark motivation. So it's like this, you're motivated from this very dark place, often from a wounded place, often like an unconscious, like shadow wound that you don't even know exists. Like, I'm not worthy of love, or I am not enough, or I don't deserve, I'm always going to be alone. And you have to go out into the world and you try and fill that void with those things I mentioned, like the career, the status thing, like, and what you end up doing is he says it beautifully. You're stacking trophies in the attic of a home with a broken foundation. And so so as you're going out and doing those things, that is a constant grind state, constant fight or flight. And then they don't know how to regulate to come back to like homeostasis within their own bodies. And what I see, you get a lot of that'll manifest in several ways: anxiety, burnout, depression, addiction, because they'll try and find other ways to regulate. And I know a lot of men personally. You can do that. You can, and you're just on the gas from basically your 20s, like college, university, all the way through. Like you're partying in that life, and then you got you graduated, you got the job, now you moved in the city, now you get all the, like, now you've got money, and you just keep that party life going. It's grind. You're boozing, you're making up with coffee the next day, constant stimulation, and you start to achieve things, and it works for a while. But I know a lot of guys, myself included, you just hit this wall somewhere in your mid-30s, and because you haven't regulated for ever, and that's I think one of the biggest challenge facing men. And like you can unpack that several different ways, but like without being able to regulate, like you're constantly gonna have problems.
So this is such a beautiful truth, like, to talk about it. Obviously, there is so much that is unsustainable in operating in this way. And I think that I do actually want to take a moment to maybe even speak to what this feminine energy is and what this masculine energy is, so that we can even begin to look at this conversation from the perspective of where is there balance and where is there starting to become a disbalance between what's the energy that we're leading our lives with. And so when we're talking about this masculine energy, which again, we all have, regardless of gender, we're talking about more of this action, more of this drive, more tangible, productive, also logical ways of operating in the world. So there's a lot of discipline that we can derive from this energy, which is beautiful because that's also this energy that pushes us forward. And at the same time, recognizing that with every one energy, there is also an opposite and complementing energy, which is the feminine energy. So when we're talking about the feminine energy, we're much more in a state of being rather than a state of doing. We're in the state of nurturance and care, as well as creation. And so the masculine energy is also much more of a mental energy. It's an energy that we utilize a lot in Western culture because we are in this fast-paced optimization and hustle space. Like, this is just the society that we live in. And when we're actually, it's so interesting because being and growing up in the society, even as a woman, it sometimes feels unproductive to be in my feminine and to just be creating without any particular outcome, like without it needing to be for anything, but just to be in expression and be in presence. So it's really beautiful noticing what these two different energies are, recognizing that it's an energy polarity that we're experiencing within ourselves and in all of our relationships. And then even taking a moment as we're feeling into these two energies, right? Masculine and feminine, yin, yang, however you feel in resonance, to start feeling into this energy. Where do you feel that you are leading more in your life right now? Are you feeling that you are embodied more in this masculine, doing, moving forward energy, where maybe there's a bit of that force and that push? Or are you feeling that you've been operating more in your feminine, more in this flow, more in this receptivity and listening to what the present moment is asking of you? And there is a presence in that is needed. It's also not coming from your head. It's coming from listening to the body. And so it's so beautiful when we can start to just become aware of these energies, because especially as we're talking about relating with men as women or relating with women as men, we're going to notice that these energies come into play. And when there is a disbalance between these energies, it's hard to relate and to be in connection You may even be speaking the same language and not be able to feel heard because there's maybe there's two masculine energies that are at play that want to be right or want to be expressed or whatever, however that energy polarity, right, of masculine and feminine is playing out. So I really just wanted to introduce this polarity conversation so we can begin to feel into, how are you feeling more into your feminine energy or more into your masculine energy as we feel into this conversation more. And on the note of what you mentioned, Mikey, I think it's so important even to just highlight the fact that external validation is something that is so incredibly relevant in this society. Like we wear these titles like trophies. We wear our certifications and our diplomas and all of these things that we've done. And we are very outwardly displaying of them in our society because that's what is valued. That's what's going to get you the job, or that's what's going to get you, as a man, that's going to get you the girl, and that's going to get you all these things. So seeing that those external things actually do bring you that praise, how can we start to dismantle this conditioning, even as a man, right, that feels that they need to be this provider in society? How can one actually start to dismantle this conditioning and this way of operating, especially living here in North America, where we do wear these things with a lot of praise and pride? There's a lot of that ego that can begin to come in.
Yeah, that's beautifully put. I want to offer like a slightly different take on that. It's like, because it's okay for a man to want to have goals and to chase the career or the, we want to have it like the income, the job, the car, the girl, like those things are fine. Those are like goals that are worth having. It's just, and being in your masculine to chase those goals is fine. It's just I think so many guys don't have an understanding of why they are chasing what they are. And that probably does take a little bit of stepping into your feminine to be like, well, wait, what are my values? What do I care about? What impact do I want to have on this world? And that takes some self-reflection and some feeling, and not just like, I want to make money. Okay. How do you, like everyone, most men, if you ask them, want to make money. So if like, are they, the deep question is, am I running away from pain or discomfort, or am I running towards something that I want, that I care about? And a lot of guys, especially younger men, they're just outputting constantly so they don't have to feel. There's an author, a thinker, Terry Real, talks about this idea of covert depression in men, where it's as long as they are achieving, as long as they're ticking things off the list, as long as they are accomplishing goals, they're getting wins at work, they're working out, they could be incredibly productive members of society. And from the outside looking in, they've got it all together. They've got they might be married, they might have a partner, they might have a home, they might have it might all be good. But if you take those things away, they get fired. Now they can't pay the mortgage. Now maybe they have to give up the home, which happens, or the car or whatever. And you start to strip those things away from them. Then the depression comes out. Like, oh, I'm actually not okay. I actually don't have an internal sense of self-worth. I actually don't know how to validate myself or even define who I am without these wins that are external to myself. And yeah, like that is, so it's like, to bring this back, like, it's okay. It's like those traditional things that society puts us on us men to try and go and build. are okay. It's just, and you like, if you're hanging your entire self-worth and then thus your entire sense of self-love on things external from yourself, then eventually it will run out and you have to face yourself. And that can be very, very disarming. Like, and then then you're in crisis because you may not have the tools. I am describing myself. I have been through all of this where I did not have the tools to figure out what to do when everything fell apart. And when I found men's work, I was like, oh, where was this 10 years ago? Because that's when I really needed it. I'm so grateful I found it now. Thank God. But I'm jealous. There's some spaces, some programs I'm in, and there's a guy in there, and the age range is huge. It's like 19 to, there's a guy in his 70s. And his name's Cody. I pulled Cody aside, the 19-year-old, and I'm like, I'm so jealous of you because he's going to have this framework for what it means to be a positive, conscious, masculine man his whole life.
I'd love to bring in a question there. Thank you. Thank you for sharing what you've noticed and your experience. And the importance that's coming through from is like the compassion that's needed for men, the empathy, and having hosted many women's circles, many spaces. My question that's coming through really strong is how, especially in terms of regulation, like what works for men to actually regulate? Because when I'm thinking of being with my partner by the water and like, babe, come sit with me, look at the water. He's like, Megan, this works for you. This doesn't work for me. Like, can we not do this right now, please? And I'm just trying so hard to help him because he's stressed and there's so much going on. And he's like, I love you, but like, quit it. So I'd love to know, how does co-regulation amongst men work? How could men and women co-regulate together without us trying to force what works for us onto you?
This is such a good question. I hate staring at the water. And I'll tell you why. I had to figure this out for myself. I'm like, why do I was assigned this task on one of my programs, and it was do nothing for an hour and be meticulously do nothing. Sit down, don't think, don't plan, no phone, no music, nothing. And we've done some hard stuff in some of my training, and this was the hardest thing I had to do. And you want to know why?
Yeah.
I had to figure that. I'm like, I don't know why this is so. Why is this so hard? Why is this so hard? Because I wasn't doing. Yeah. I was tasked with being. Now I must simply be. Now I have to sit in my feminine and just be. And like, that was so hard. Because and now I have the tools that I have personally to regulate. I have a practice of breathwork and meditation that I do almost every day that helps me to come back to baseline. But I couldn't even do that while I was doing nothing. So I was like, I could be meditating. Fuck, like, so annoyed. I don't know if I can swear, but I swear. But yes. So for men, it's this idea of regulating by just dropping into a calm space can be very confronting because you are so used to go. And now it's like, you take all the stimulation away and you're like, So I think probably the most accessible, important tool for men is to connect with their breath and do breath work. Because that is something you can actively, I'm stressed out. I feel dysregulated. Just being able to slowly recognize when you feel dysregulated is such a beautiful practice as a man. I would go so far as to say that you cannot be truly a positive or conscious masculine man without the ability to regulate your emotions. Because in simply expressing emotion is feminine. There's a school of thought in the polarity work where it says all expression is feminine, and the opposite of expression is containment.
Mm.
And like a guy can like being able to feel into your emotions, but without them leaking out. So like a guy, for example, a man who freaks out at a small infraction and starts yelling, or gets really or banging around the house, or gets really dysregulated and punches a wall because he's so angry, because something set him off because he's so dysregulated. That is not masculine. That is feminine. You cannot control your emotion. Or again, another example is a guy who's like, maybe he gets depressed and he can't pull himself out of it. No one looks at that guy and goes, "Oh, that guy's a real man." He's really in his masculine, just sitting there, like not being able to like regulate and get out of his own funk. So, sorry, coming back to your question, answer it more directly. It's like there's a few ways of regulating. There's two ways. There's top down and bottom up. Top down. Let's start with bottom up. Bottom up is somatic out, like your body. Somatic means within the body. So breath work is bottom up. You are moving energy and also actively changing the chemical composition of your body, of your blood within a 5 to 20-minute session. You can go as high as an hour or an hour and a half if you want to get into holotropic work, which is another thing, but very simple 8 to 15-minute sessions of breath work can change your entire day. And something that is like a tool that I literally could not live without. So that one's very accessible. There's tons of apps online to get into that. And then there's the one that is top down, which is this is harder because it takes a level of metacognition of being able to have a deep understanding of your own psyche, your own thoughts, so that you can dictate if you are having a thought, whether it is a productive one or not. Which is very, like, not everyone, like, this takes work to be able to do. And I did not have this skill up until like last year. That's why I was 41 before I had this skill to be able to decide which thoughts to give energy to and which ones to release. Because I could understand that they weren't helping me. They didn't help me feel better. Like this is now making me feel like bad, and it's not productive. So I don't need to think this thought. I can release it, and the way you learn how to do that is meditation, which is a beautiful, beautiful practice, but it does take much more time to be able to develop. It's worth chasing. And there's great apps that can help you to start. Headspace is probably one of the more accessible ones. That's really good. There's also, what's Sam Harris's app called?
I know Insight Timer.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
Sam Harris has an app. I forget what it's called now, but you can Google it. And yeah, so there's bottom up, top down. And then for me, if I really need a hard reset, I've really had a tough time. And it's funny because it gets into like bro science a little bit, but like ice baths, contrast therapy, ice baths, sauna. I don't know anybody that can come out of a session like that feeling regulated. So those are a few tools.
I have a very specific question in response to this, because I know as a woman, talking and storytelling and really just being able to sit with your sisters and speak to what's going on, and just the way that we're all able to just really drop in and connect to what another sister is expressing or speaking to emotionally. Like this is how we as women co-regulate and how we also connect. It's like storytelling is such a big part of how we operate as women. And so I'm so curious if this is something that is supportive to men, if this is something that men do on their own. Are they speaking about their emotions and speaking to what they're going through like that? Or is it something that needs to be more prompted?
I'm so glad you brought this up.
I'm like, what happens at these bro nights? Like, what do you guys do?
Yeah. So, I'm going to give you a stat. Most men who commit suicide are in some kind of therapy. Like it's like 80% or something.
Hmm.
Like at some point in their crisis, someone or themselves got them into some therapy program in order to help.
Hmm.
And then it did not help. Because most therapy is pretty feminized. And I don't want to attack therapy because therapy is very important. And there are other fields like science that are very masculinized. I've never used that word before, but masculinized, I suppose, because I don't want to say I don't want to attack therapy, but it is this idea that talking is going to make you feel better. And I think it sounds like I am not an expert in women's regulations. So if you tell me that this works for women, I believe you. But often what men need to do is much more physical. They need to move the energy. It's a somatic challenge because you have to understand we have this ideally testosterone pumping through us and we need to fucking do something with it. Yeah. And we've had practices. Oh man, what am I like? I'll tell you. Okay, I'll use story now. I was at a men's retreat in April. We were sitting around for hours talking about things, had speakers coming through or doing practices and blah, blah, blah. At some point, it's like after lunch, which is the period in a man's hormone cycle. Yes, men have hormone cycles and they are a daily cycle. Men are on a solar cycle, women are on a lunar cycle. So around mid-afternoon, men are like useless, basically. The worst point in our day. We got the leaders got up and they put on Smells Like Teen Spirit. And I'm going to take credit. I started a mosh pit and it was awesome. Mm-hmm. And like the smiles on men's faces when you're engaging with other men in a physical way is so healing. And like, that's like, and you think about from an evolutionary psychology perspective, it makes so much sense. Like we had to go and hunt and like challenging, you look at like small boys, with their fathers, like going, like physical challenges are so important. So, and that all having been said, and yes, talking about it when you have the skill set, when you have developed when you've put in some of the therapy work or the men's work or the somatic work to understand what's going on in your body and how you're activated, put the effort understanding your wounding and where it shows up in your life. And then you can talk about it. And then that's very helpful. But often guys just coming out, I'm going to stereotype, but like the blue collar guy who doesn't know what any of this stuff is. And you put him in front of a therapist and she's like, well, how do you feel today? Or he is like, how do you feel today? And it's like, dude, like, what is, I got shit to do. That's his mind state. But you put him in, yeah, man, but we've done like Qigong together and like, or Tai Chi together where you're like trying to move energy and like knock a guy over without you getting knocked over, and that type of stuff can get very like again, guys like light up with that. So yeah, and there's I don't want to, and then that can also get a little toxic. There's men's groups and men's spaces where you're just going out into the woods and you're just kind of yelling and fighting a bunch, and like and you feel better because you're moving energy, but you're not actually doing much healing. So there is a balance.
I can't help but wonder in this conversation, especially because we were at a women's festival this weekend. I'm so sorry. We're going away from the questions, but things are coming through. Where does the energy of the witness come into these spaces? Because we have the masculine, the feminine, the moving energy, the receiving energy. And then as you were speaking, like even just like that Tai Chi and trying to knock them over, and how that, like it could get into like toxic spaces or spaces where it's not as healing. Where does like that witnessing of what's happening between us right now come in? I don't know if that's clear.
I'm not familiar with.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, you know what? Let's bookshelf it and maybe it'll come back more clearly, because I'm so curious about how masculine energy experiences witnessing. Because when I'm thinking and feeling into women's circles, like Milena, when you were explaining the storytelling, and a lot of the times it's witnessing the emotion we're each experiencing
Without changing it.
without changing it. And that's just one iteration of what, or witness. Even I agree with you, the bottom up, that women, it's not even just the storytelling. It's, you have an emotion, let's watch you like dance it, move it. Maybe you're shaking, maybe you're growling. Let's witness you in that.
Yeah.
What is there an equivalence of men witnessing each other in this space? Or,
each other?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of my question in a weird way, if there's a question there.
There is so much power in showing up and being vulnerable in front of other men and being witnessed by other men in doing so. So I'll give you an example of a practice that we did that was probably very surprising, which is something that would never happen in a women's space, I don't think. Where we were put into groups of 4 groups of 4. And the practice was, or the prompt was, I want you to feel into someone that you have a grievance with, someone you're mad at. Could be your mother, could be your father, could be an ex, could be a friend, a business partner, anyone. So we'd have one man stand in front of another man and be that person. You're projecting your anger onto this man in front of you. And then the 2 other men, and then the task was embody it. If that the society is lifted, there are no rules. What would you do to this person that you have that hurt you? And then the 2 other men would hold you back. And you get men to feel like really fucking like express their anger. And sometimes you'd have to get a 3rd man in to hold the guy back. Because, and that, like, that is energy that is just stuck for years. And to bring that up in this way of deep somatic work, and then being witnessed. And like some guys, they come out of that and you're like, they have surprised themselves at how much came up. So there's so, because men feel often, because there are so few spaces for men in society. There used to be spaces. We might have had a church group or a parlor or a men's club or things like that, and used to be the boardroom was the men's space. But we've, rightly or wrongly, those spaces have been, I want to choose my word carefully, have just gone away inside, and there's not a lot of spaces for men to be amongst men by themselves. And having that witness of seeing that other men, you are not alone. You are going through, there's other men going through the same stuff that you are going through. And there's so much power in that, because it becomes very there's a sense of release. It's like, oh, thought it was just me.
Mhm.
And that's very, very healing.
Something that was actually coming through very strongly as you were speaking, Mikey, just to this practice, which I think is so powerful, to like really allow yourself to feel and go there, go into that activation, and to fully express that energy that's just been so stuck in the body. And oftentimes what we find is that the anger is just, it's protecting the sadness that's underneath it.
Oh yeah.
And I find that for men, sadness is an emotion that's very challenging for them to express. I've had brothers express that, culturally it's seen as weakness.
Yes.
And so it's very hard to even find accessible in their body to let it be released. And so I find that anger, being able to tap into that from the perspective of like that more of that activation, more of that anger, more of that force and power that's associated with this emotion, it really allowing that to be expressed first allows for the softening and then the sadness to be released as well in that process.
Oh yeah.
And so I'd love to even like explore that, like how is that a gateway to be able to go into what these deeper root emotions actually are?
I'm going to answer your question first with some historical context. As we were evolving as a species in the tribe, so this is, pre-technology, when we were still living in tribes. And you can see this in some of the tribes that still exist today, is that the children were raised by the women. But when a boy hit somewhere around puberty, they would have to go through an initiation. And that initiation could have meant they would have to leave the tribe alone, be alone, and they would have a task. And that task might be survive in the wild for 10 days, or don't come back until you can come back having hunted something, or don't come back without a lion's head. Things like that. So the movie, I'm familiar with the movie 300. There's a great example of this where Leonidas had to go and the wolf and the winter cold is the scene. And the reasons for that is that men within the tribe are only valuable to the tribe to the extent that they can provide something back to the tribe. And that might be resource, that might be hunting skills, it could be shamanic skills. It might have been like maybe they were more spiritual. But a man that cannot add value within those societies was a man that was a liability. So but to be able to strengthen the entire community, it is very important that the men have to go through this initiation. The women inherently have value because women can create life and keep the tribe going through creation, through giving birth. So that's why the women don't have to go through this. It's also why women don't have to go through an initiation when they hit puberty, because their bodies go through the initiation and then the world around them starts treating them differently from a girl into a woman. When the men would come back from these initiations, they would then go and live with the men. In some cases, they would have to come back and have some extreme severance of their relationship with their mother. They might have to come back and slap their mother in the face. And from that point onward, they would then be living with the men, and then they would have mentorship. They would have older men who could help young men who are getting dumped with obscene levels of testosterone. I don't think women can ever really understand what it's like to wake up one day and have your going from 0 to have your testosterone 1500, and all you want to do is feed, fight, and fuck. And to be able to have older mentors put guardrails on that energy and help young men understand how to channel it, what to do with it, that is productive. And those traditions lasted right up until the Industrial Revolution. Even in agrarian societies, they would have something like that, where you're okay, your father is a blacksmith, you have to become a blacksmith. This is how you become a blacksmith. And you would train for it. And what happened in the Industrial Revolution was men were taken out of the home, put into the factory, and left with the women to raise. So you've had 4 or 5 generations of men mostly raised by women. And what's very interesting is if you look at the men that are incarcerated, men in prisons, almost all of them came from single parent homes with the mother and not the father. So I bring this up because it's like I can't overstate the importance of having men having being with a group of other initiated men that have gone through some kind of initiation. So as you have this tribe of initiated men, so like they would create practices. You would be on hunting exercises, or you would be on something where like it was a lot of somatics. That's why men play sports, because you get so much of that camaraderie, that energy, that testing, like within those spaces. And they would create safe spaces for you to move that energy physically. And then often when the physicality is done, when the anger is gone, when the anger is exhausted, then there is surrender. And then you can cry. And it's so bananas to me at this point, having done this work, how this idea that men can't cry, or that a man that cries is weak. And overstate how bullshit that is. Because a man that is in touch with his emotions and be able to regulate and take it, by the way, but this is also very important. This is not something that you do with your woman.
Oof.
And there's so much of this where it's like there's a lot of guys. I was one that you don't know how to deal with any of this. And then you just drop it on your woman. And you expect she's got to be your sexual partner, your best friend, and your therapist. And I can't think of anything that's less sexy to a woman than watching a man be able to not get over something, not regulate, not like stay stuck in some toxic pattern or some emotion that he can't get over, and have her try and regulate him. So I don't know. Yeah, it's like your woman cannot be your only source of regulation. A man can be a source of regulation for a woman. If you want to talk about polarity and to be able to contain your woman's energy and emotions, like that is a deeply noble thing for a man to be able to step into, and something that women should be able to rely on from their men. But that's like, we can get into that in a second. That's another topic. But coming back to this, is like, this is the idea of having a tribe of initiated men, or a men's circle in modern day, a men's circle, or a brotherhood, that you can take this shit and be able to drop it all, drop the performance, drop the striving, drop the and just be fucking seen and held by other men, is so healing and so important. And this is something, and we know this from history, because we've had this for thousands of years. It's only in the last 150 years that we haven't had it. And look, and men are in fucking crisis today. So yeah, I can't overstate how important that is.
See, I think it's so interesting, and I want to speak to this because it's like, as a woman, what a woman can offer to a man is a space for him to be able to just strip the mask of needing to seem like he has it all figured out, needing to seem that like he's the leader, like he's leading and he knows where he's going. There's always going to be a period where as a man, like, like you're and as a man or woman, right? Like you're figuring it out and there is this in between and liminal space of not knowing. And so kind of in that threshold of, you're working through something, but you haven't yet reached that outcome where like it's been worked through and fully processed and you're back in your power and back in this clarity and direction. It's, as a woman, I think a big part of the space we hold is to be able to hold that nurturing space, to be able to hold that deep presence, and for a man to feel safe, to be able to land and like be honest with himself first and foremost without any of these masks.
Embodied woman. Yeah.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes. And as a woman, a big part of that is also not stepping into this very deep mothering archetype.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's not empowering your partner or the man that you're holding space for to take it in his own hands, right? Like it's not being that therapist, not trying to solve all of this person's problem. And especially holding that space for men in the ways that we would for women. And I realize now that the way I would hold space for a woman is very different than the way I would hold space for a man.
So, a couple things here. Coming back to bridge the last topic. One, what's very interesting is like, I don't think if I dropped either of you into like the middle of a men's retreat, like during one of these practices, and you can see the depth of men's emotions with love, you would have no idea what to do with it. Women, if you really see the depth of like, one example is like, if you see like, have you ever had a partner cry? And not just cry, but like sob in front of you. It's like, it's very confronting for a woman. It's like, whoa, I don't know. Often the reaction is like, she might never have seen her father cry. Maybe she saw her brothers cry if she had brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden it's like, this guy's collapsing in front of you. And you're like, I don't know what to do with it. And there's a lot of men. This comes up a lot in the community of like, because men are told, it's so tricky because men are told, your problem is that you're being too masculine, and really if you were more feminine and more in touch with your emotions and just talked about them more, you would be okay. So really, the problem is not that you are a bad man; it's that you're a defective woman. And okay, so men try that, and they bring the wholeness of what their internal world is like to their woman, and 3 months later they're single, because that is incredibly confronting for a woman, and in the end makes her feel unsafe. A woman wants to, in the end, wants to feel safe with her man. And if she doesn't have there's evolutionary reasons for that, for like in different ways. But if she's lost confidence in his ability to navigate his world and be able to show up for her, then that is the opposite of sexy. So within relationship,
Mm-hmm.
an embodied woman has a beautiful ability to be able to bring peace. That's all. Yeah, for women listening to this, that's the number one thing men want from their woman is just peace. And if you can, sometimes he may just need to be held and reminded of his power. And if you can be that source of because coming back to like the therapy for a question, like the talking, women, in order to feel safe and okay, for women to feel mentally healthy, they want to feel heard. Men, in order to feel okay and feel mentally healthy within the tribe, want to feel respected. So, and that's why talk therapy doesn't always land for men, because you're just talking about the thing instead of healing it. So if you can help, if you can be that beautiful feminine entity, that nurturing energy for a man that reminds him, you got this. I believe in you, no matter what. That is like so nurturing for a man, because he can drop he's like, I don't know if I can do this. And then just like, yes, you fucking can. Fuck yeah. Because I believe in you. And just hold him. That's what men would want. And now at the same time, caution for men is, if you want to bring something to your woman like that, it's important to be like, ideally you can bring something and say, this is what I'm going through. I'm aware of what's going on inside me. I'm aware of how it's showing up, and this is what I'm going to do about it. Or this is what I think I'm going to do about it. Instead of, I don't know what to do, which can make her feel unsafe. And the question, I don't know what to do, that's the one you take to your men, to your men's circle, to your brotherhood, to your boys, to like the other initiated men. And I'm not talking about the guys you go drinking with. And that's that brotherhood of initiated men. It's like, that's the thing a lot of men are lacking. And that's the thing that men's work steps into, and why it's so important.
Thank you, Mikey. I know that we've definitely veered in multiple different directions, but I think the conversation unfolded in the exact way it was meant to emerge, and the threads that we pulled on. I do want to be conscious of time and check in if you have any final things you'd like to add to the conversation, that you'd like to share about anything you're developing, creating, practicing, your men's work, or even Milena, if you have anything else you wanted to share, say, before we close off.
Thank you. I'm just like integrating all of this goodness. And truthfully, this conversation was so supportive for me as a woman to understand men more, to understand what support looks like for men, and being able to understand, how can I show up for my sisters and how can I show up for the men in my life without emasculating them, and the importance of just presence, just how beautiful the simplicity of presence can be, and just seeing someone and being in connection with someone without needing to ask anything of them. I think there's a lot of expectation for men to do and to provide. And it's been really beautiful to actually just be in connection without any of those agendas, without putting any of these expectations, um, and really just starting to, I think, know how we can just relate, just understanding how to relate, whether it's in friendships, even relating in the dating culture, how we can deepen polarity in relationships, and also where a lot of this conditioning of relating has come from what we've learned with our parents at home growing up. You know, I first related to the masculine through relating with my father. And that was the first relational dynamic that kind of taught me how to be in relationship with the masculine. And I think for those of us that haven't had, parents that were able to hold that space for us to explore our inner masculine and our inner feminine in relationships, it's something that we learn as adults, and we're kind of all navigating the world trying to understand how to speak the same language, and trying to understand how to really support one another And it's not something that we're taught. It's something that often we learn through life experience. We learn through making mistakes and being messy and learning from one another. And so I think that these conversations are so important. And I also am so grateful, Mikey, that you're in this space, that you're really holding the line for men, for men having advocacy and support. I know for women, it's very common. I'd say it's much more normalized for women to have women's circles and to gather and to talk about vulnerably about the things that we're moving through internally, our emotions, our dreams, our hopes, our fears. And this is something that I think that our culture right now has created a lot of permission for women to be that way and to relate in this way. However, I still feel that for men, this is something that's still very needed.
Yeah.
And normalizing it is so important, and having intentional spaces for initiated men, the importance of initiated men, because you are the average of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. And so it's so important to have discernment also around who are the people that you're going to navigate this complexity. And so I think it's so important to be able to have these conversations and to really prompt more of this in the world. But yeah, these are my thoughts, and just so much gratitude, Mikey, for these reflections. I want to also leave it off for you if there's anything that you feel called to share, also about the work that you're doing in the world.
So one thing I'll call out is that there's a lot of guys in the space in men's work that are there because of their women. For one, not just so they can show up better for the women, but literally because their woman was like, "You need this," and that's like, I want to like invite your audience, like if you have a man, or you're with a man and you feel like this resonated and you might be able to get something out of it, and I promise you there's something in men's work for every man, then yeah, I mean you can reach out to me. Like I'm easy to get to. I'm open on Instagram. My handle is Mikey A Wilson, but it's Mikey A Wilson. I need a more easy handle, I think, maybe. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram, and I'm happy to. I work one-on-one with men, and often we do one-on-one stuff. We do group work. It's all sorts of stuff that's happening in the space that can be beneficial. And if I can't help, then I'm more than happy to be a resource and point people into a direction that might be helpful.
Thank you. We will be linking everything in the show notes, so you'll be able to have Mikey's Instagram there, so you don't got to type it in or remember anything. You'll be able to click directly to it. On that note, thank you everyone who's tuned in to this fruitful conversation, and I really do hope that if there was any triggers or activations or anything that there was tending to solve, and also curiosity to hear and listen and open up our hearts to have a lot of compassion for men's experience, because we need to be receptive to hear and to meet that in ways that are actually supportive to men as well. So thanks for joining us for episode 5, Mikey. And thank you for listening to episode 5. And we will see you all in 2 weeks for episode 6 with another lovely guest. So thank you. Thank you. If this conversation stirred something in you, stay with it a little longer. Notice what resonated. Notice what challenged you. Notice what your body knows, and notice what it may still be learning.
Discernment is rarely about arriving at certainty. More often, it is the practice of remaining curious, grounded, and willing to stay in relationship with the questions that matter. If you'd like to continue exploring with us, join our newsletter for reflections, resources, and deeper conversations inspired by each episode. You'll find everything linked in the show notes.
Until next time, may you continue learning when to trust yourself, when to question yourself, and how to discern the difference.